Well, welcome back. I hope you're well. And as always, it's a pleasure to have you join again. I'm going to be speaking about a topic within relationships um, that perhaps is at the heart of a lot of the issues that we have today, both failings and failures and shortcomings and mistakes, mostly avoidable, but that we find and we see in a lot of our relationships. And let me start with perhaps to preface the conversation as follows. There are two ways via which people learn. Two main ways. We learn through our lived experience. In other words, personal experiences. Now, the second way via which we learn is through the lived experiences of other people, which I call other people's experiences. We can experience life vicariously through the experience that other people have lived, or through the lives that they led. We can draw on examples that are worthy of emulation. We can draw on failings and warnings that are worthy of avoiding. And rather than using the process of time, the only resource we have, as a tradable commodity to gain experience, we can substitute our time with someone else's lived time by combining both other people's and the selected group's lived experience. We can extract from that experience good areas that we should emulate and bad areas that we should avoid. We can combine it with ours and we have exponential feedback and exponential results and outcomes. This is not a complicated process. If you think about yourself, you were from a people, a group, a tribe, a nation state. You can term that whatever and however you like. The point is that you originated from something. Some of the behaviors that you have and you manifest on a daily basis come from paradigms, conditioned habits in your subconscious mind that have formed a self-image that you have about yourself. Some of that has come through your environment, your associations, your experiences. Sometimes it comes from your dreams and goals and behaviors you choose as a result of aspirations you have. But mostly, if you were to take people as a group, our traditions play a huge role in who we are. In many ways, someone else has been responsible for programming our software before we get to the age of reason. So before you get to the point in time where you can think deductively and inductively, use your intellectual faculties and make smart decisions, there's a software that has been written by someone else or by a group of people, sometimes handed down generations, but that software is controlling your life. And therefore the outcomes and the decisions that you make are intrinsically connected to that software. Wouldn't it be strange if the software program is a failed software program, guaranteed to create failed outcomes and failure? Wouldn't it be strange if we continue to use that software, refusing to change or modify the software? Now think about this from the perspective of the systems you have around your life. If you drive a car, most cars are programmed in several respects. Sometimes that programming is not just electronic, sometimes it's actually from a component system. This is why some cars have recalls, where there is something that was developed, it's been realized over time that there is a fault, and they send out a recall to ask owners of the car to bring the car back so they can replace the component part that has issues with an updated version with a better program or software. A lot of new cars have the same features because many new cars, especially EV vehicles, are more technological than they are automobile, especially as you move from the internal combustion engine to the electric vehicles. There are fewer parts, and a lot of the software is based on codes. Now, in order for the car to continue to perform at its optimal position or potential, recognizing that the programs are written at a point in time, and no code is 100% accurate because new information comes through, and therefore you have updates. Now, I have a computer system in front of me here, and I find it strange, but I'm also very pleased that there will be times when I turn on my computer first thing in the morning, and I am prompted to accept a new upgrade to sometimes an application, a software, or an installation, a program that is in the system. The update is given to me usually for free, and that simply means that the manufacturer, when they sold the computer, the laptop, or the system, they understood that the program they designed and sold to you was not 100% accurate. That over time that they would come across new information, and therefore it was important that they had a means and a method of communicating to the users, irrespective of ownership. Whoever was using the computer had to be made aware that a new update has been released, and it makes the software that you are using redundant. Now, you might be thinking, and I hope you are, you might be thinking, but what does this have to do with relationships and people? It has everything to do with relationships and people. My software was programmed by several factors, but also several people. My ancestry line, my heritage. Now think about the word tradition. Tradition is simply a culture, a paradigm of people, a way of doing things that has been maintained for a long period of time. In other words, you take that thousands of years or hundreds of years, the way things have been done, and you freeze in time all of those mannerisms, behaviors, attitudes, decorum, value system, and you install that in every single person's software and every person who passes through the same genealogy. Some cultures have better traditions and better value systems than others. They're not all the same. Now, when we get to the age of reason as human beings, as adults, one of the most important things that we have to do is ask ourselves a simple question. Is the software in my system, is the software producing the results that I have? Is that software consistent with the end goal that I have for myself, the vision, the dream, the purpose that I have for myself? In other words, is this software enabling me travel towards my true north? Now, usually, any tradition that has lasted a long, long time will always have elements of the truth and good aspects. But you also have to be aware that there will be things that require updates, because the way things were done in the past were not the same as the way they are done today. In the hunter-gatherer days, we hunted for food very differently. Today, we obtain food very differently. So updates are necessary. But the first part of the process has to be an awareness that there are better ways of doing things, and there are more expedient ways of doing things. And your responsibility is to yourself, and that there isn't someone out there sitting in the ether There isn't a capricious God out there controlling all the strings, stopping you from achieving your success because he's malicious. And there isn't some huge creator that is predestined every single decision you make, and therefore making you, I guess, a puppet that cannot change the trajectory of your life. There isn't one. So you become the master of your destiny and your faith. You become the author of your life. Every day you get a new opportunity, and you can rewrite the rest of your life if you choose to. And that requires reprogramming and deprogramming yourself. In the session that I did yesterday, I talked about Alvin Toffler. I attribute this to him. I believe I am correct. There are two names normally that I confuse. Eric Hoffer and Alvin Toffler. But one of them said that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and then relearn. Therefore, an intelligent person is one who has developed the faculties of their mind. Now, this is not his quote, but an intelligent person is one who has developed the faculties of their mind, so much so that they are able to first unlearn, learn, and relearn, with the purpose being that they have identified a goal that they want to achieve, and they know how to go about acquiring the resources required to achieve said goal. That is an educated person, not someone who has actually been stuffed with information into their memories and they simply regurgitate what they know. Now, your memory works in the same manner as a computer system. With your memory, we can replay the past. In other words, you can play the script that has been installed in your system. With your imagination, you can pre-play and dream of a new future. Now, you cannot replay the past and pre-play the future at the same time. There is a season to sow, there is a season to reap. You cannot do both at the same time or in the same season. In order for you to combine both the imagination and the memory, you have to understand how to use your intellectual faculties. And one of the faculties you need to learn how to use is focus and perception. In other words, you must be able to focus on the memories in the memory that are correct and connect those to the memories or the dreams of the future in the imagination that you want to achieve. Therefore, we all have a moral duty to constantly go through the software system that we have installed in ourselves and try to identify whether those systems need to be upgraded. Now, one of the best ways of doing this is to do it implicitly, by osmosis. It's hard for you to go through your entire life looking for things that require upgrades. So what we do is we go through the process of immersion. We put ourselves in places, we listen to conversations, voice of reasons, and people we disagree with who have different perspectives. People who are not very similar to us in software, but people who have different softwares. And by doing that, we have the opportunity to compare outcomes and results and behaviors and mannerisms and values and principles and etiquettes and conversation approaches, communication strategies. And the way we are designed as human beings, because we have intellectual faculties, imagination, memory, will, perception, and your focus, because we have all of these great faculties, we are able to separate and place alongside our installed software other softwares. And if we come in good faith and if we come peaceably, we can always identify where there is a superior upgrade compared to an inferior upgrade. And the idea should always be as follows. Whenever you find an idea that is superior, an idea that has more of the truth compared to the idea you already have, you must let go of what you have and reach out for what is new. Because by doing that, you grow, you learn, you progress, you become a better person, you die to your old self, and you become new. Now, there are core parts of your ideology and your value system that perhaps need to be kept. Because you can't just change. Adaptation is not a lifestyle pursuit. Adaptation should be something that happens incrementally. You can't live a life of adaptation every day by simply changing who you are every day. So there's a core part of who you are that is good. What we're looking for is actually at the margins, how to improve your life through incremental improvement. And this is where other ideas and better ideas should displace the old ideas you have. Now, I went through 15 minutes to use examples. I found in my life that many a times, it was hard to understand complicated topics and subjects. But if it was presented in the form of a story, allegories, parables, aphorisms, if it was presented in the form of poems, prose, it's possible to remember. And if you combine that process of memory and remembering with spaced repetition, it's possible then to become aware. You come to a place of what we call awakening. Now, 15 minutes has just gone, and I'm talking about things that perhaps you might be wondering, what does this have to do with relationships? Well, it has everything to do with relationships, because if you think about yourself as a computer system, you have hardware and you have a software. Your hardware is who you are, all things remaining equal. Your software is how you behave, all things remaining equal. And how you behave varies in several aspects of your lived life. The way you eat, the way you dress, the way you speak. I talk about the A, B, C, D, E, F, G of the self-image. And I can go from A to Z. Your appearance, your behavior, your communication, your digital avatar, your emotional intelligence, your level of fitness, whether you have a state of a godly state, I hate to use that word, whether you're honorable and have humility, all of that plays a role in who you are. Therefore, the software in each of those areas, what I call pillars of your existence, can be upgraded. So with relationships, I find it sad that we as people of the West and people who live in the West, we are more educated than we've ever been before. We are the most wealthy than we've ever been before. We are the most, have the most access to data, information, than we've ever, any other generation before us. We have everything within our fingertips, and things are the cheapest that they've ever been before. The things that were available to the classes are now available to the masses. Now, when you look at all of that, all of those are advantages. And anyone will, if you were drawing a conclusion, would say that we should be happier, we should be more prosperous, we should be fulfilled, we should have peace in our lives, and we should be attaining a level of self-actualization that even the gods would have envied. But if you look at the results, we're more depressed than we've ever been before. More people are using prescription drugs. Most people in the UK are on some form of psych medication. The number of people using psych meds and the age continues to drop. If you were to look at people from the age of roughly about 14 up to about 44, and this is a sad realization, 1 in 3 people are on some form of psych medication. Now, it's a multivariate reason, and therefore multivariate analysis is required. It's not univariate. But my position is a simple one, that whilst we have sought for And we've built to the heavens our Tower of Babel. We have lost sight of the importance of relationships. And we've fragmented from what used to be our core unit, the importance of the group. And we've moved away and pursued our dreams, and rightfully so. But in doing so, we've found ourselves in places with people, and we're part of a community, but we don't like or know each other. And here we are, trying to fend for ourselves, alone, without our tribe, without our community, distant from our loved ones, but also not having the correct software installed in our system to enable us distinguish between good and evil. So we are therefore learning using the first way of learning from our personal experiences, and we are making mistakes. And unfortunately, unlike animals that have instinct and the genetic code, we have the ability to choose. We have the free will, we have the power of choice, and we have the intellectual faculties. So most people are like human animals that are, if you've ever seen an animal that seems confused and disoriented in its local environment, that is the picture of a human being. We haven't been taught how to use the gifts that we've been given, and therefore we are confused. And we go sometimes from failure to failure, and we're picking up speed, but in the opposite direction, because we haven't been taught. So much so that the one aspect that should actually unite all of us, which is our connection with people we care about, is void. Now, 80% of our happiness is said to come from our relationship. That life is all about relationships and all about the intimacy within the people you care about. But we have less of those. Now, some people have more acquaintances because we are now on the social world and we're less intimate with people. A few people can boast of having 4 or 5 friends that if they called at the drop of a hat because they were in need, those people will show up to support them. Many will boast of having thousands of followers and hundreds of friends, but they are all acquaintances, and they connect with you because of a shared purpose or goal, but they do not care about you enough to care about your well-being. We have a problem. In the West, we have made mistakes, and a lot of those mistakes have come from shunning the traditional values that our forefathers and the gifts that they gave to us. We said they were unintelligent, not sophisticated, didn't have the vision, lacked understanding and wisdom, they didn't have judgment, suffered too much as a result of the wars they chose to fight, and that we were more sophisticated. We've had peace and we've created an abundant life, but we are still very unhappy. And there's a metric that you can use, or several that you can use to identify whether things are being done right. Life expectancy has increased, that's great. But there's a downside. If you go back to the 1940s, and this is where I bring today's session to a close, if you were to go back to the 1940s, the life expectancy in the UK was about 45 years on average. The average age of people who got married was 25 years. So most people die between 40 and 45 for several reasons. Lack of innovation, technology, lack of available developments and improvements in biology and the biome development and the genome development and all of that. We didn't even really have antibiotics at the same level as we do today. So people just died. But people got married roughly 25 and had 15 years of bliss. Now, it didn't really matter because they had a short life and therefore they maximized their lives. Today, the average age of marriage is 35 for a woman and slightly above for a man. But the average woman is living to 85 and the average man about 82 years. So we have gained more than 3 times the lived experience or the lived life that those in the 40s had. Now, what that simply means is that if those in the 40s had only 15 years roughly to enjoy a married life and before they died, and we have 50 plus years, then we had better ensure that we have around us the necessary things we need, not just tools, not just resources, but the ability to coexist and make relationships meaningful, because otherwise we will live longer, but we will suffer longer. Now, if you go back to the point I made about medication and the fact that most people are on psychiatric medications, 1 in 3 people in the UK below 44 is on psych meds. That number is increasing from my last estimation at an exponential rate, so much so that by 2050, I think we will have about 3 in 5 people on medication. Now that is huge. Now remember, these are the people who will live longer. And as technology continues to advance, especially with the breakthroughs we're starting to see on the genome revolution and gene editing and curing diseases like cancer and all of the diseases of the past that stole our productivity and our livelihoods, we will start to live to 90 and 95. So we will live longer. Unfortunately, we're not coupling early enough. We're choosing to remain solo as individuals, and we don't have the unit around us, the family. Most of us leave our tribes and we go pursuing pastures that potentially are considered to be lucrative. In doing so, we neglect the protection and the provision and the nurturing that comes with the pack. But also, we embrace new opportunities, rightly so, but we embrace new ideologies, new cultures, new people, and people who are very dissimilar to us. Now, one of the biggest mistakes in the West that was ever conveyed to the people of the West was that diversity is our strength. One of the most sad but also inspiring statements, quotes to have ever come out. Because at the surface, you can't argue that diversity is a good thing. You cannot. It's the same as the Black Lives Matter. You can't argue with the position, because to do so will be to say you're suggesting that black lives do not matter, or to suggest that diversity should be shunned. In the West, you just cannot. But I have always been encouraged and taught to always consider policies and ideologies not based on their intentions, but based on their outcomes. Judge the outcomes. But what we find is, if you judge based on outcomes, we're letting go of the core foundations and riches that came with our traditions, because we're trying to be more liberal and more free and more wise and more enlightened and more diverse, that we're losing sight of what makes life meaningful, the relationships we have, and the people that love us and care for us, and how at the end of a life, if you sat down with someone who was in a dying home and you asked them what were your regrets or what are your regrets, most of them will tell you that it wasn't that they did not make more money, or they did not read more books, or they did not travel to more places. Most people will say that they wish they had nurtured certain relationships earlier and more closely. So, in closing, let me leave you with perhaps a call to action. That call to action is as follows. What if you could accept that the software installed in your system, like I have in my computers, is in need of an upgrade? And what if that upgrade would make the processing speed, would make the operation 50% more effective? And what if it will not cost you anything for that upgrade, other than being curious, being fascinated, and being willing to try? When you have considered all of the potential options, and when you know within you that there's a possibility that the change will be to your betterment, would you embrace that change? Now, It's a difficult question to answer, because just listening to me thus far, there may have been things I may have said that would have gone against your programming and irritated you. And but for the grace of God, you would have left. You may have left. And therefore, that should be a reminder that there's a programming in you to reject new knowledge. Now, a wise person once said, many years ago, that he formed the habit of writing down any new idea that he found to be good very quickly, because he found that his mind had been so conditioned to reject any new information or new idea. So he had to write it down so that he could always come back and revisit that idea, that profound idea. Let me encourage you, as I close, to start to look at relationships in a different way and understand that life is about relationships and people, and that at the essence and the core of who you are is love. And love is not complete unless it gives itself to another, and therefore you are not complete until you love. And it's important for you to surround yourself with people who you can love and who can love you, and allow yourself the opportunity to be loved. Now, I hope that's been useful.